Hello everyone. I'm just an ordinary employee who likes history. Last time, I tackled the Battle of Lexington Concord. And now, I'm going to discuss the American Revolutionary War. The battle has finally begun. As I told you last time, the Battle of Lexington Concord has ended, and 1 month after that, the Second Continental Congress was held in Philadelphia. On the first meeting out of the 13 colonies, Georgia was the only one that didn't participate. However, in the middle of the second meeting Georgia joined. Finally, all 13 colonies are coming together. The topic of the meeting is the war against England. The 13 colonies have been scattered in the sense that they couldn't fight a proper war against the mighty British. To fight a powerful enemy, they have to unite. Thus, the Continental Army was formed. George Washington became the commander-in-chief of the army and was unanimously elected by Congress. This George Washington, well, he's a famous man. I'm sure you've heard of him. He would later become the first president of the United States. He was also the first president of the United States, and its current capital is Washington, D.C. The name Washington also comes from George Washington. But you know what? At this point, I honestly don't know who he is. How could someone who just appeared out of nowhere be elected unanimously? I'd like to give a brief explanation. He was born and raised in Virginia. Virginia was the first place to be colonized. And, it was famous for plantations that used black slaves. The Washington family made a fortune from plantation management. Well, it's not that they made a lot of money. They're not very high class, but were just middle class. George Washington lost his father at an early age. He had an older brother who was quite a bit older than him. His brother acts like his father. I'm going to call him George now because it's too complicated. George doesn't remind me of Washington at all. When he was young, he worked as a surveyor and his brother died. So, he inherited the farm. But that wasn't all. My brother was a captain in the Virginia militia. So this was a turning point for him. After his brother's death, he also became a soldier. George served in the French and Indian War. This has led to his fame as a soldier. His fame rose to great heights. He retired early from the military, so he ran a plantation. He also became active in politics because of his military career. He became a politician at that time, right? And after that, there was another event that changed his fate. Let me tell you what it was. In 1759, George Washington got married. He proposed to her after only 2 meetings. Why did he do that? This woman was a very rich widow. Well, I don't know if George Washington just fell in love at first sight or if it was the widow's wealth that caught his eye. I don't know which. Anyway, he suddenly had a lot of money. His assets suddenly increased. And because of his high reputation as a soldier, he became very influential, especially in the South. After the war, he opposed the Stamp Act and the Townshend Acts and took a high position. He showed great leadership there and he had a lot of supporters, especially in the South. That's why among the 13 colonies at that time, there was no one else who could compete with George Washington. He was unanimously appointed as the commander-in-chief. It's important to note that at that time, he was only the leader of the army, neither the leader nor the president. So if you ask me where the supreme decision-making body of the 13 colonies is, it's the Continental Congress. Well, the Continental Congress is not that powerful. It doesn't have that much power. It's like a federation of 13 countries and doesn't have any legal authority. That's why the colonies sometimes ignore what the council says. For example, they ask for supplies or ask for soldiers. Back to the subject, to resist the British, the Continental Congress formed the Continental Army. But, at that time, the people of the Continental Congress were also involved, and even Washington. The atmosphere was not yet like, let's be independent. You know what? The 13 colonies sent a document called the Olive Branch Petition to King George III. The contents simply say, let's get along. What the heck is this Olive Branch Petition? What's that name? It comes from the episode of Noah's Ark. Well, I'll spare you the details. The olive is a symbol of peace. So it was an appeal for people to get along. It's important that the letter was addressed to King George III, not to the British Parliament. And the reason why is because the colonies and the British are having a little dispute at that time. It's not your fault. I respect the king. So if you could just get rid of the taxes. I'll tell the king that the US and the UK can get along. That's what he peacefully said to the king, but it didn't work out. But why didn't it work? In the Continental Congress, they didn't agree that much. The person who wrote the Olive Branch Petition was Thomas Jefferson, who would later become the third president. At that time, John Adams, who was going to be the second president, wrote a letter to his friend and sent an olive branch petition. He wrote to his friend and said, "I think we should destroy them." That's what he wrote, right? The Englishman found it and confiscated it. And when George III saw it, he thought, "Oh, I don't trust this anymore." So that's it. Because of this, war has become inevitable. The good relationship between Britain and the US has already disappeared. The fate of the colonies is now in the hands of the British. The fate of the colonies is now a choice between life and death. After this, the 13 colonies surrendered to the British unconditionally. And accept all the arguments of the British? Or will they fight to the end and win their independence? I think everyone already knows the outcome. I will explain it in detail in the next article. I hope you find this video interesting. If you think it's useful, please like and subscribe to my channel. See you soon.